welcome to the Charleston Barn. Before introducing this evening's event, I have a couple of housekeeping announcements. If you could just take a moment to note the position of the emergency exit. But in fact, the main emergency exit is behind you all, on your left, on my right. In the event of fire, cattle stampedes, civil unrest, nuclear war, please await instructions from a member of Charleston staff who will be wearing a neon jacket, will be identifiable by that. Please make sure your mobile phones are turned off as well. Rest assured that the bus back to Lewis at the end of the evening will wait for you. It won't leave until well after the event. And note that the bookstall at the back will close after the interval. So with that all out of the way, I'm delighted to be welcoming you all to one of the most eagerly awaited events in the literary calendar. It's an evening that has assumed almost mythic status in the world of literature as an event during which the greatest short story writers known to humankind converge on Charleston from all corners of the world. It's a truly Olympic spectacle, but it isn't just about competing for the honour of being the Charleston Short Story Slam winner. Unlike the Olympics, our winner will go home with a life-changing prize of £100 and some beer. Before introducing our host and compere for the evening, I would just like to thank our sponsors, Much Ado Books in Ulfriston, for making the event possible. Much Ado Books represents all that is best about independent booksellers. And if you've never visited their shop, your lives up until this point have been largely wasted. Indeed, the first act of each of you tomorrow should be to go to Ulfriston and pay them a visit. I guarantee it will transform your lives, it'll improve your writing, and it'll make you all better people. We couldn't be more fortunate to have as our host and compere this evening a man who is a legend in his own dressing gown, which he's not wearing this evening, which is a shame, Damian Barr. He's a journalist, Radio 4 playwright, he's host of the Soho House Literary Salon, he's a man about town, he's a cultural entrepreneur and a salonier. Damian has dedicated his very existence to the discovery of new lifestyles and social trends, and his witty but weighty writings appear in the Times and the Telegraph, as well as the pages of Country Life and Harper's. And though he was described by Manolo Blahnik as a gorgeous anachronism, he is a literary pioneer in all senses. And though enjoying a global cult following, he still lives in Brighton, where he keeps chickens and devotes his life to perfecting the perfect martini. Though if you see him in the interval, he can be bribed with white wine. Please join me in welcoming Damian Barr.
Okay, let's get this show on the road. It's really bright. The light is incredibly bright. I feel like a pole dancer. It's not going to come to that, though, hopefully, this evening. Welcome, all of you, to the barn. Can you hear me? The microphone's working? Yes? Yes, good. To this sold-out event. I'm very excited to be here for the third year in a row. Many of you will know the rules by now, and those of you who know the rules will know that the rules are slightly fluid. We have an added element of danger this year, which is a countdown clock, which may appear at some point behind me. Bit of an ooh for the countdown. Ooh. Because in the past I've been accused quite rightly of being unable to read numbers, and as the night goes on, that does get worse. So there will be a countdown clock behind me, and I'm sure you'll all join in telling me if it gets to 0 or thereabouts. So tonight, our very brave writers and readers have 3 minutes in which to read a story on the subject of the final. And we always try and choose a subject which is open to interpretation, but not going to lead people down a very scary, dark path, because that can happen. So I'm hoping that we get lots of uplifting and exciting stories tonight. And as I say that, I'm aware that my story isn't all that cheerful. We have 4 judges. They're sitting in the front row, and I'd like them to stand up. They are Colin, Carol, Freya, and Camilla. Round of applause for the judges, please, ladies and gentlemen. There they are, there they are. They cannot be bribed, they've made it very clear, and they will be holding up scores as we go along, and then at the end of the night, the top 3 people will come up on stage and you will applaud them into either oblivion or success. So it's sort of like a much crueler version of the X Factor. And I'm assisted tonight by the lovely Megan, who's here, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause for Megan. Sparkling away, and there's £100. Is it cash? Is it? Yeah. Is it like actual dirty cash in this envelope. Let's see. Should I count it? No. It feels like cash. Smells like cash. £100, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll be giving that prize out and some beer. Anyway, here is my story. Now let's see if this countdown works. It may not work. We'll try. Oh, it's there. It's supposed to start when I start. So shall I do that? Shall I? Go. It's on. Right. Shit. Oh. Harry eyes the couple across the bar. Late 30s, maybe too late. They've gone from champagne to white to red, and now they're on whiskey. They've gone from nervous to flirty to niggly. With each round, his tip has got bigger, which means a taxi home when these two finally leave. It's 2 a.m. The only other drinkers left are guests in this boutique hotel which boasts mid-century style with 21st century comfort at ridiculous prices. The cheapest room is £450 and you can barely fit 3 people in a bed. Harry knows. Harry's tried. Stay on your side of the bar, his boss warns. Her stern tone is undermined when Harry catches her in the mirror, staring at his arse. Each buttock is perfect as the olives in a dirty martini. She eyes him like the first drink after a long day. Harry polishes a crystal whiskey glass, holds it up to the light, watching his world refract into a million billion pieces. He enjoys the heft of it in his hand, although he'd prefer something simpler, if he was still drinking. She slides off her stool, making it look like she was getting up to go to the toilet anyway. He leans across, and a warm, wet burp escapes. Sorry, chap, he gurns at Harry, who resists the temptation to smash the glass and cut him a new smile, a real smile. Have one on me, he says, scattering 20s that he thinks are only fivers. Thank you, sir, says Harry, pocketing the lot before his boss asks for her share. The woman staggers back, reapplied lipstick coating her teeth. She reels and heels she'd hoped to kick off hours ago. She looks, Harry thinks, like a slowly deflating sex doll. Thanks, she slurs, winking at Harry as he steps from behind the bar. He walks them to the door, locking it behind them as they hail just one cab, something they'll both forget in the morning. Harry mentally checks the bank account where he keeps his stolen tips and decides against a taxi. The more he saves, the sooner he'll get there. His final shift. Done. Hey, with a minute to spare. Just like to point that out. So this works. Oh, it does work. It will work when it comes back. Fantastic. We like the countdown? We like the countdown. Adds a sense of drama and peril, I thought that. Okay, so our first person is... Who is first up? Okay. So, Alex Hansen, possibly a man. No need to sound so delighted. Alex, are you a boy or a girl? Are you not sure? Up you come. Come on then. Get up here. Okay. Alex, the countdown is there. It's behind you.
Just feeling sick.
You're
fine.
feeling sick?
Yeah.
Should I move away? That's all right, don't worry about it. It's dry clean, it's fine. Right, Alex, when you're ready, go.
The final. His eyes, like a cobra, mesmerising his prey, reflected in the mirror as he stretched and rotated from one leg to the other, a gladiator, primed and ready for combat. The thought, is this really what I want, was impatiently dismissed. Will any muscle, tendon, shoulder, any wrist, ankle, knee, toe, finger let him down? Will determination, willpower, fitness and preparation carry him through? He thinks yes. But he cannot know what challenges await beyond the oasis of the unknown, but he believes he is the master of his own destiny. Now it is time to leave his cocoon surroundings, and opening the door, takes a deep breath even, and begins the long, lonely walk down the empty corridor, totally aware from now on he stands alone. Wiping the haze of perspiration from his top lip, he reassuringly fingers the headband as he eases the voluminous bag higher onto his shoulder and raises his chin and focuses ahead. He is halted in his stride by the arm thrusting the phallic extension towards him and interrupts his reverie with incomprehensible questions. He responds with his boy-next-door white-toothed smile, giving nothing away with apparent charm. No sight now of this stalking predator. The uniform approaches and guides him through the door to tumultuous applause, to which he is seemingly oblivious. He strides to his seat, and the ritual commences, a meticulous preparation, symbolic, almost pagan, in its precision. He controls every action, every breath, until the last second when he strides towards his protagonist, intimidatingly, jumping up and down, coiled like a spring as they await the toss, that moment of chance when ends are chosen for the start of the Wimbledon final. Will he prove to be the cobra or the mongoose?
Thank you, Alex.
Did you think about that word choice? It was controversial. I know, I was excited. I was there. I'm going to choose somebody else now. Oh, shit. Sorry. Yes, let's vote. The line underneath means it's a 6. Yeah. Yes. Okay. A 5, a 3, a 6, and a 6. A range of scores there, ladies and gentlemen. Out of 10, I should add, they are a maximum, so round of applause. So thank you, judges, for that reminder to vote there. That was very, very, very good. Just keeping you on your toes. Kate, Tim, or Time? T-Y-M. Kate, where are you? Tim. Welcome, Kate. I know.
Hello, Lewis. I'm from Hastings. It's all a bit posh for me.
Right, so when you are ready, go.
I got through to the Miss UK final 1977. I was 18 and gorgeous. The flick of my hair was more Farrah than Farrah herself, and my pose and pout were perfect. Being in the final is all about winning. Let's face it, no one remembers the runners-up. It's the diamond-encrusted crown that you want, not the loser's tiara. The evening gown round was a cinch. Miss Wolverhampton nearly broke her ankle falling off her heels. But not me. I did the sachet to the end of the catwalk, dipped hip, swish and turn. I knew how to inject just enough bum wiggle to make the judges drool. And by the swimsuit round, I had them eating out of my hands. My only serious competition was Miss Bognor Regis. Little innocent looking, butter wouldn't melt. The judges loved that. The questions round came with the usual world peace and working with children and animals, and I was no exception. Let's face it, they're not after rocket scientists, just a nice smile and a pert pair of double Ds. Well, needless to say, I wasn't worried. Miss Durham fluffed her words, Mr. Visors looked like a dog's dinner, and Miss Doncaster, well, let's not even go there. So the final round of whittling had passed without surprise. Miss Bognor and I were still in the running, as was Miss Croydon. The compere took the mic as a hush fell over the expectant crowd. In third place, he announced, Miss Croydon. Well, I could have guessed that. I mean, those teeth, they wouldn't have gone amiss on a brewer's dray. In second place, Miss Hartlepool. Me! I barely heard the rest of the announcement. I barely saw as they pasted the loser's tiara over my Farrah flick. Everyone gathered round Miss Bognor-Regis as she simpered and cried and clutched at her crown. Miss Croydon went forward and kissed her on both cheeks, and then I did the same, ricked a smile glued to my face as I died a little inside. In 1978 and 1979, I won the Miss Trenton's Tractor Crown for 2 years running. People still recognise me. My farming fan base is very loyal. Ask them who won Miss UK 1977. They haven't got a clue. But they've still got their posters of me sitting on a Trenton's tractor. And I get invited to the National Union of Farm Workers annual conference most years. And as for Miss Bognor, I believe she's obese and living in Pontypridd. So you tell me, who's the loser now?
Judges, 8, 8, double D, and no, 8, 8, and 6. Very high scoring there. I really desperately need a new visual in my head at this point, because all I can think of is what would Miss Croydon look like. Oh, it's so disturbing. I can't quite read this one. I think it says, it's one name, like Madonna, but it's Irina, maybe? Irina, welcome. Are you going to tell me that it's Erina? It is Erina, okay. Welcome, Erina.
I hate being old. No, not old. Old I could cope with. Old would be quite cool, actually. I wouldn't have to try anymore. I could just kick off my shoes and let my feet smell. Middle age. Middle age is what I'm talking about. Specifically, middle-aged and single. Not so long ago, if I wanted a man, I'd just run my fingers through my hair, puff out my chest and purr. I practically had to fight them off. Got into quite a bit of trouble in my day, I can tell you. It's not a competition, my friends used to say. But it is really, isn't it? And these days, it's not so easy. I'm not so fit anymore. I'm a bit grey and lumpy. I look in the mirror and I see more wrinkles than an elephant and an arse to match. When I was young, I used to dye my hair to fit in with the club crowd. Black, bleach, purple, you name it, I dyed it. Now I do it to hide the grey. Every year I spend summer in Spain. One of my friends has a club out there. It's wild, a truly hedonistic lifestyle. I help him behind the bar, late nights, late mornings, Spanish waiters. This year, I was having such a good time I forgot all about my hair, and the first haircut when I got back, and there it was, piles of grey fuzz all over the cutting room floor. Now, I saw it and I just cried, and I begged Marco to dye it there and then. I have it done every month now. Just brown, though. I don't want to look like mutton dyed as lamb. Trouble is, the men I fancy aren't really into the natural look. They want young and fun, not old and flab. I'm not getting any attention anymore. I can feel it all slipping away from me. Love, partnership, the things that make you happy. It just seems all so final, like I will be this forevermore. End of story. I cry myself to sleep most nights. If only Dad was still alive. I miss my old dad. He'd set me right. I can hear him now. Pull yourself together, son, he'd say. Don't be such a ponce.
And I was thinking, because you said purr at the beginning, that it was going to be a cat. So that'll teach me for racing ahead of myself. Judges? 5, 5, 6, and 7. Thank you, Erina. So, this is Cy Mitchell. Cy Mitchell. Welcome, Cy.
Okay. My great-grandfather's great-great-grandfather, Felipe de San Antonio de Carvalho, though not a trader in people himself, arrived on the Angolan Lunda Plateau along with the worst of the Portuguese slavers and cross-bearing lunatics. Having run up unserviceable debts and marriages in both Lisbon and Rio, Felipe sought escape in Angola, where he took a wife from the Chokwe tribe. In truth, he took several, though the Chokwe frowned on polygamy just as much as the Portuguese. Felipe could be described as an idle charmer. It was, after all, his silver tongue that had got him into his current trouble, though unusually had failed to get him out of it, and it was his dexterity with words that drew the Chokwe to him. You see, the Chokwe were a people of poetry, and they believed a life passed from this world to the next carried by a person's final utterances. Chokwe poets were held in high esteem, and though the Chokwe were an almost entirely illiterate people, families preserved elaborate stories to ensure safe passage of loved ones at the end of their days. Familial blood ran along the most unlikely deltas, and all shades of tenuously connected kinsfolk would appear at the bedside of a relative to witness and lightly crib from his precious last words. Felipe hadn't been among the Chokwe long before families with a fading anciao would appear at his door bearing sculptures, tools, cows, sheep, scrubbed and braided, taut-skinned girls and even fresher-faced young lads. And even though Felipe never accepted their gifts, with odd exceptions, he would give them the words that they sought. Now, the Chokwe had a king, Mwantangand, and one night there was a knock on Felipe's door, and his wife opened it to find one of Mwantangand's aides, who bid Felipe to the king's residence in Luena. When he arrived there, Felipe found the king surrounded by his household and in the throes of death. Felipe recognised among the gathering several of the most revered Chokwe poets, but it was Felipe the king motioned to come to him, and it was to Felipe that he said, "Deixa-me dentro," let me in, meaning to the afterlife. Well, I mean, this was some ask, even for a prize bullshitter like Felipe. But there are men at the exit, so Felipe came up with this. I wronged and I was wronged. I gave and was given to. I loved and was loved. My defiance was true, and my truth defiant, for I am Mwantangand and I am a king. The king looked doubtful, but repeated the words and promptly died. The nation mourned, and Felipe was shackled to the regal pyre, as was the custom with favoured poets, and burnt along with his benefactor. In time, slavery would end, and colonialism, and the bloody civil war that followed, and of course the Chokwe would pay dearly in all of these brutalities. But Felipe's hurriedly concocted words of defiant truth became part of Chokwe folklore. Even today, if you're lucky enough to attend a Chokwe death ritual, and many do, it's in the Lonely Planet book, you may well hear Felipe's words. I am Wantangan, they say at the last. I am a king.
That was so good with the timing, was just on. I was getting so excited about ringing my bell. I was just like, oh. I just need a moment to get over that excitement. 8, 6, 6, and 9. Very good. I think that the Chokwe tradition of burning poets should be brought back. I'm just saying that now. Oh, this one's blank. Somebody's having an existential crisis. Okay. This one is Anthony McLaughlin.
I'm an Edinburgh man. I hope you don't put that against me. Final words. The noise and dirt was too much for me. I decided it was time to leave. So I leant my rifle carefully against the parapet and walked to the communication trench leading to the railhead and the way home. The MPs stopped me before I could reach the train. You're in deep trouble, Private, they said. I was used to trouble at home and school for reading poems instead of lessons, so I didn't worry much. I thought General Court-Martial was for generals. This was for me. Casting away his arms before the enemy was the charge. Guilty the verdict. There's only one sentence for that. which is why I'm alone in this little room with a comfortable bed, 2 chairs and a table. It was still dark when the sergeant came in with my breakfast. Bacon and eggs, tea and toast, much better than in the trenches. Eat up, lad, said the sergeant. It'll give you strength, and so will this, giving me a large tot of rum. I don't drink much, but this was warming on a cold early morning, and I felt happy for the first time in days. Will I have the same breakfast tomorrow, Sergeant? I asked. No, lad, he replied. You won't need it where you're going. Just then the padre came in and prayed a little. It's what they do, I suppose. Then he asked me if I played cards. I answered, only snap. So he played 2 games, and I won both, before the officer came in with 2 troopers from another battalion in full combat dress. Private Smithson, it's time, fall in. So I did, marching out the door into the courtyard and up to the wall. I couldn't remember my favourite poem. I wandered lonely as a cloud. Instead, I could not face death, which being known, men led me to him, blindfold and alone. I faced a squad of troopers when they told me to about turn. Then, as the glare of dawn dazzled my eyes, the officer put a blindfold over them and marched away. The final words I heard, firing squad, present, aim, fire.
And what a beautiful reading voice as well. Judges. 7, 9, 8, and 7. A very good score. How are we doing, Megan? Where are we getting?
I was doing really well up until now, and then my maths and Carol Vorderman skills have evaporated.
Okay, who is up next? I'm not going to fire you, Megan, because I'm really bad. Michael Fleming. There is somebody out there, isn't there? Yes, there is. Hello. It is a long walk, isn't it? It's all right, though. Here you go.
The final. Knowing at that moment the Holt family would be sitting down to a healthy salad, it was with a sense of irresponsibility that I passed their apartment. Of the 4, it was only the boy who looked my way. I locked eyes with Kyle as he was about to bite a stick of celery. He held to his mouth like a microphone. Years later, I went to see Kyle in concert. By that time, Bob and Gretchen had come to terms with his lifestyle. It helped that Emma had qualified as a doctor and produced their 2 grandchildren. But it would be Kyle who cared for his parents in their declining years. When I passed Brendan's apartment, I was surprised to see that my reclusive acquaintance had guests. And then I realised that Brendan had 3 fully dressed mannequins around him, positioned as though in lively conversation. Throughout the gaiety, Brendan slept, missing all the fun. A lazy plane was passing overhead, a tiny brooch on a faded blue shawl. A woman screamed and a car screeched to a halt. I wanted to turn and look, but found myself unable to warrant the effort. I kept moving. As I passed Ria's apartment, I thought, why do you see those other men when it's me you should be sharing that wine with? And as this thought was passing through my head, Ria lifted hers. She caught my eye like a paparazzo catches his subject, unprepared and wanting. And then I was approaching the Milton's place. I saw the Hockney and the cabinet with the figurines that Maggie lived to dust, and the piano that old Freddie had played. On the far wall, I saw the huge mirror, and there was me, looking back at myself, eyes widened, hair streaming. I thought that my face would be the final that I would ever see. But over his delicatessen, Mr. Pinelli had opened the awning, and it was into that blue cradle that I fell, the chamois leather flying from my hand and landing with a splat at the feet of the screaming woman.
What the window cleaner saw. Okay. 8, 8, 8, and 9. Is that right? No, I'm having to question. Yeah. Broadly speaking, it's correct. We have one person before our break, which will last for 15 minutes. And that person is Kieran Daly. Kieran gave quite a girlish yip then. I'm not, is that Kieran's friend or is it Kieran? Just looking. Can't see. Oh, there he is. Okay. I'm down the outside.
Thank you. The final. It is a feature of English football that finals are frequently played on inappropriately sun-soaked Saturdays. In the case of the FA Cup, by AXA, the interminable earlier rounds eat up the spring weekends. In the case of Little League, this is to mimic the FA Cup, by AXA. And so on a June morning, aged 12 and slipping out of boyhood, I stood attired in the red and white quarters of the Red Knights, who, to our parents' proud but frank surprise, had made the season's final. Inept at our national game, but cherishing both my dashing strip and teammates, I played my usual role as substitute, confident that I would be duly called upon. For this was the Little League of a southwest London borough, liberal with a big L, a small l, and L's of various fonts and colours, in which the unwritten rule was that every child played every week. I made my entry late, when we were safely and wonderfully 2 goals ahead of the Maroon Marauders, and I could do little harm, but I exceeded expectations. Straying yet again out of position in our opponent's ill-guarded penalty box, their marauding having left their hapless goalkeeper marooned, I gained unfamiliar possession of the ball, a reflex pass, barely intended, but the sweetness of which I recall to this day, and our reliably competent striker struck majestically home. Giddy in anticipation of victory, we ran and embraced, and were thrillingly surrounded by our teammates in boyish emulation of our elders' AXA-sponsored celebrations. The red and white melee finally yielded to the referee's gruff entreaties, its overexcited members peeling away one by one until only the striker and I remained. Despite his later protestations, he had resisted my still lingering and now stunningly revealed kiss, not an iota. And even as the parental cheers from the touchline faded to an embarrassed murmur, and I tumbled backwards from his belated shove, I savoured the salt-sweet newness of my mouth, smiled stupidly under the sun's caress, and knew already that for both of us, everything had changed forever.
That's got to be like the first time I've ever wanted to actually play football. It may shock you to hear. Right, 7, 7, 7, and 6. Very good. That black line means that we're going to stop now for an interval. So I will see you back here in 15 minutes with your stories and your drinks ready to go. See you in 15. Okay, welcome back, everybody. The judges have been drinking in the interval, so the scores may be higher in the second half. We can hope. Did everybody have a nice interval? Yes. Is the Indian food van still outside? Yes, please. Oh, I missed that. I wasn't. I know. I should have anyway. I know. It was very nice, was it? Right. So we had Kieran Daly earlier, and now we've got Nikki Daly. Any relation? Yeah, I'm just thinking you... Just coincidence or... Just coincidence. Oh, I recognise you.
You what, me? What did you say? She whispered. Nausea cut her like a scythe, and she doubled over, desperate to quell the bile that reared up in her throat. The sickness was getting worse. Blinking hard, the outline of Aidan's shaven head, luminous, skull-like, slowly crystallised beside her, eyes soft, his mouth a slash of stubbornness. A hand reached out, steadied her, guided her gently towards the cave wall, and then was gone. Face to rock face, the cold slowed her tears. Tiny shapes shuffled in, tiny hands reached up and tugged at her skirt, eyes unnaturally bright and ringed by dark circles, their cries barely piercing her blanket of silence. Leaning over, she stroked their cheeks, roughly shorn heads, saw their bloated stomachs. Crooning gently, she sank to her knees, her wasted arms gripping these shadow children to her chest. Goya's ghost watched the tableau, silently weeping. Outside, Aidan stood tall, ravaged by hunger, but not radiation sickness. Still a formidable barrier, his eyes continually raked across the grey pre-light of dawn, senses strained. They would come soon, that he knew. And then what? The final awful decision had to be made. Crawling and creeping, fingers of light edged over the barren earth, lengthening and growing stronger as the minutes ticked away. A wisp of excitement, quickly subdued, hung momentarily in the breeze. Nothing else stirred in this post-apocalyptic world. Yarin, his eldest son, left the cave and stood beside his father, their shadows shorter and fading, yet entwined. He whispered that his sisters were quiet now, sleeping with mother. Aidan outlined his plan. Can you hold them off? I only need a few seconds. Then we must run. Yarin frowned. Surely there isn't enough time for all of us to get away. That's an order. You know where to go. Yarin nodded silently. Moments later, howls ripped through the silence, rope snake whistling, grazing, but missing Aidan, who shouted, Now, Yarin, now! The boy hurled rocks again and again at the shapes whose stench punctured the air. They hung back, eyes glistening, howling, though human, slavering at the prospect of flesh. Then he ran. Hours later, the boy held his weeping father tight to his chest. It saved us, gave us time. The final, terrible sacrifice. Aidan sat, heartbroken and haunted.
Slightly harrowed by that. The scores are 5, 6, 7, and 6. Whatever the theme is, there's always dystopia. Happy families, post-apocalyptic. It's always the same. Always happens. Rosie Cullen. Rosie Cullen? She took a little while to realise it was her, and now she's picking her way through the back. So busy. I like that little turn of speed there, Rosie. It's all right, we're not penalising you. If you could flick-flack, that would be quite good. It's like...
Frank leaned back from the patio table and straightened the Daily Mail with a flick. Apparently it's against EU regulations to chuck coffee grains around your garden. Vi yanked up a weed and grunted. Her knee was giving her jip again. As she passed the gravy over supper, Frank tapped the table. Heard this nonsense about putting coffee grains in your compost? Yes, dear. Oh, really? On the news, was it? Not surprised. Vi clutched her seatbelt as they swerved into Sainsbury's, a thin scrape on her side of the Astra. When they returned with the laden trolley, Frank pointed to the scratched paintwork. Really, Vi, you must be more careful when you take the car out. There was an invitation waiting for them amongst the bills. Malcolm's 4th child was to be christened shortly. I hope this is the last, Frank harumphed. Anyone would think they were Catholics or Muslims. We could take the train, change at Reading, Vi proffered. Unbelievable. Did you know it's against the law to use coffee grains to control slugs? Chemicals in the caffeine. Need a licence. Have you ever heard such rubbish? Lights flashed behind them. Darling, I think we need to be in the left-hand lane. I'm overtaking. For the last 30 miles, Vi wanted to say. Middle lane hogger, Vi wanted to say. Senile old duffer, Vi wanted to say. But as usual, Vi said no such thing. A blare of horn as an Audi skimmed past. I think you might be drifting, Frank. Vi braced herself. Bunch of nutters. Bloody EU. Did I tell you? Drifting, Frank. Vi closed her eyes. The Astra crunched up the gravel. An excited wave. Mom! Prang. Watch out there, Dad. Hello, son, Frank greeted, slamming the car door. Malcolm happy, jiggling the baby. Oh, well, what are bumpers for, Dad? You'll like this, Mal. In the paper, another ridiculous diktat from those bureaucrats in Brussels. Mom? Malcolm peering in the passenger window. Mum, you all right? Coffee grains. Can you believe it? Dad, I think. A crime, apparently. Malcolm frozen. The baby crying. Ludicrous. Bloody ludicrous.
We've all been bored to death by Frank in our time. That was terribly good. Right, well, where have we got to? We have 8, 9, 8, and 7. Very good. Biggest round of applause the Daily Mail's ever had. Right, so Celine West. Right at the back, it sounds like. Welcome, Celine.
We're in bed. The sun isn't up yet, but he wants to be in the shed fixing the cow. He calls, "Get the tubes," as he stamps downstairs, so I pull on my boots and follow. The sleepy cattle snort and twitch. Cow hair and the smell of shit get up my nose. He has her out of the pen in a patch of light from a torch, the prize-winning cow, we hope. He squats and feels her udders. Next to his feet is a fat canister of gas. I pass him the long, flexible tube. He attaches one end to the gas and the other to a syringe, which he sticks into one of the cow's teats. She moans and steps sideways, her hooves click-clacking. He puts his hand on her and coos, "Steady, girl, there's my beauty." Behind his back, I roll my eyes, but he must sense it because he looks over his shoulder and says, "What?" "Nothing, darling," I say. The gas hisses into the tube, inflating the cow's udder. When it's done, he pulls the tube off and uses his finger to mash glue into the end of her teat. He repeats the moves until all the teats are sealed. Her udders are big and pink and round and more appealing than the udders of any other cow. He slaps her rump and grins at me. "Fixed," he says. Together, we dance the cow up the ramp into the trailer and roll off to the final county show. It's dark by the time we get back. He has driven in silence for an hour, aggressively chewing gum. He yanks the poor cow out the back of the truck, and the three of us stand in the damp yard. He holds a cigarette in his lips while he rummages in his pockets for his lighter. I can hear a hissing sound coming from the cow. I start walking backwards, my hands up. I say, "Wait, what kind of gas did you use?" There's a click, and then bang!
I just have to ask a few questions. So, Celine, just before you go, does that happen? Does it like kind of cow beauty show fluffing like
yes,
that?
Totally. Thank you, Farming Today, for my inspiration.
Oh my God! Writers can find inspiration anywhere. Such a barn-appropriate story. Thank you very much. We will take scores. 9, 8, 7, and 7. Very well done, Celine. Strange parallels with the Miss Croydon story at the beginning there. Catherine Dogrel. Catherine Dogrel?
The caretaker knelt down and ran his thumb over the carved letters of the new marker. "Take out thy neighbour's bins and be cleansed inside," he read. Each January, the people of the city and the valley would vote on mottos left by those who had died the year before. 5 new markers added to the city's legacy for all to read in the graveyard high above the dwellings. The caretaker preferred the profound, but didn't question the choices that had been made for the stones. Educational, philosophical, whimsical, the spot was theirs for the span of the people's grasp of eternity. On the hill, the sun scoured the stones, the trees, the earth between them, until the phrases were the only clarity in the landscape. The city was hidden by a haze of its own making, appearing only on descent. The souvenir seller knew all the stones. He made the best of them into bracelets, necklaces, key rings, to sell on a blanket outside the gate, but he lacked a maxim of his own. He tried his thoughts on T-shirts, testing for comments, but nothing to raise a glance, let alone a vote. As he sat under the palm trees, blanket out, the silver trinkets piercing the sun back into his eyes, he considered. The sun was at its peak, beating, hammering, striking the ground, the cracks in the mud big enough to wedge a sunshade, too big, as it wavered and fell. As the sun flashed off the ornaments, the car's driver couldn't see the salesman crouching to pull it back up. The shade was wedged into the car's radiator, the man broken into the graveyard wall. The next day, the sun was weaker, just enough to see the fading stains. The cellar's patch was empty, but would be filled by others in time. The caretaker picks up a note blown off the blanket and caught in the grass next to the palm trees. "Do not ask for credit." He put it in his pocket. It would make the vote, he knew.
So, judges, 7, 7, 7, and 8. So we have 3 special magical spots left and more than 3 names in the hat. Danger, peril, but pleasure for Jane Wainwright. Jane?
It was 3 years on Thursday since Michael had finally left Anne. The pain grew more spiteful around late September. She was 61 then. 3 years later, it still felt like a death sentence, and perhaps always would. Some days were negotiable. Moments playing with Oscar lifted her. She clipped Oscar's smart red lead on and saw the dog's delight. He bounced at the door while she buttoned her walking coat. The sight of his enthusiasm made her smile finally. Male impatience, she told him. I'm coming. It's all right for you. You've got your coat on. Her voice suddenly loud in the echoing hallway. The dog trotted happily down the leaf-strewn street, nose turned parkwards. Anne watched her conker-shiny loafers step neatly, one in front of the other. To outsiders, she looked fine. Inside, the pain burned acid hot. This late autumn was mellow, soft and kind. That other year, bitter winds had torn at the trees, blasting the town to greyness and despair. The day he left her had leaden skies, and rain had flung against window panes as she howled alone. Returning was always the worst. The waiting afternoon silence hung thick on the golden air. She poured chilled white wine. She found little pleasure really in drinking it, feeling sleepy afterwards, but didn't resist somehow. So she sings quietly to herself, badly, "Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Seeing Michael's then smiling face, even their silly song had been stolen from her now. Oscar's intelligent eyes tracked her every movement, sitting neatly by her feet. They had been married 38 years when Michael went, robbing her of a life with his leaving. Those last months had been a torture to be relived repeatedly. He had lied. He'd hidden the truth from her, had been living a different life to hers. "I'm so sorry, love. I just wanted us to have the final days and moments together. I couldn't tell you, just couldn't," had been his final words. Now her own version of terminal clawed its way through her insides, as it had his. Loneliness is a deadly cancer too.
So, judges, they're deliberating, they're shuffling. 6, 6, 6, 5. Okay. They are judges, they're supposed to be mean. Yeah. Judgmental, they are. Now, oh, this is quite a fancy name. Lucy Martel Ferreira. Dying to see what she's wearing. Here she comes. You left your flamenco outfit at home? Welcome.
I have a few minutes to wait. I don't like waiting. Just once, when we had to wait for the dentist and my iPod had run out of charge, Gran and I had quite a long conversation. She told me about school life in the 1970s, when children were allowed to stand and watch. She started by telling me that sitting there waiting reminded her of the start of all PE lessons, waiting to be picked. Then, when the game started, and no one had been able to avoid choosing her, She would stand on the sidelines, watching everyone else running to and fro. I asked her whether she thought it had been good for her to have done so little to keep fit. She shrugged and took another slug from her hip flask. It's hotter here than I was expecting. I peel off my sweatshirt and lay it on the track behind me. I know that back in the days before Gove, education was quite different. We had assemblies all about how schools discouraged any form of competition. Up till recently, school leavers couldn't manage the cut and thrust of real life, and everyone expected a prize for every little thing they did. Dentists even used to give out stickers to children who didn't cry. I don't cry, although I would like Mum to pay for a local anaesthetic next time I have a filling. I shake my limbs and hop a few times on each foot. Of course, it's better now that everyone chooses to take part in sport, now that everyone wants to compete. My class started inter-school competitions in Year 3. By Year 6, we were competing cross-county. We're so much better than that now. I look up and wave as my name is relayed across the loudspeaker system. The crowd here in Abu Dhabi 2020 are going wild. Here I stand with my class in the 100-metre final.
We've all waited to be picked for a team. Some of us are still waiting. 5, 5, 6. I won't be held responsible for this. 1. She's taking you down just to bring you right back up. That should have been a 6. It really is turning into the X Factor. I'm going to start talking about emotional journeys off camera in a minute. It means so much to be here tonight. I never thought I'd be here. Anyway. I wonder if this is the real name, but anyway. Duncan Fats?
I suppose I should be feeling nervous. They say it's good to have a few butterflies, but I don't. I just don't. I mean, look at the crowd. What a bunch of pot-bellied, pasty-faced losers. They're mine. I can lift them up and drop them down. And why? Because they want to share in the reflected physical glory of me. And when I go out there with my routine, flex, stretch, and extend, they will believe in perfection. And when I turn around and they see my buns of steel, they will think they have just glimpsed heaven. The judges aren't much better. I could have any of them. In fact, I have had her. My manager arranged it and pointed me in the direction of her little peccadillos. It was not pleasant. Put it this way, she was a stranger to Brazil, and it was like licking a shag-pile carpet. I practically needed a lint roller on my tongue afterwards. And I'm also unsure of whether I peaked too soon. I mean, I know she did. I nearly suffocated. But what I mean is, should I have waited till after this final before delivering the goods? Not that it matters. It's in the bag, just as I was. That overpumped Arnie was the main contender, but he shouldn't be a problem, not now that I've just taken him off-piste, so to speak. I must admit it has left something of a bad taste in my mouth in every sense of the phrase. I'm a martyr to breath freshness. But competition is competition. I bet he wished he hadn't shaved his body hair so much now. You can see his every muscle still quivering. Okay, it looks like we're about to start, and I'm first up. Ladies and gentlemen, our first entrant is the winner of the Terrier class, Bobby Delfcott Corris. Right, here we go. My manager has a good grip of the lead and it's tail up, ears perky, and best paw forward. Hello, people. Bobby the Stud Muffin has come to town. Woof, woof.
Oh, I'm so deeply disturbed by that story. Canine analingus, just what you'd expect in Lewis. I'm sure. Very Bloomsbury, actually. So I'm just very in keeping. So we've got an 8, an 8, an 8, and a 9. So at this point, while we're doing our maths, I'd like a really big round of applause for all of our writers and readers tonight. Woo! So the top 3 are Duncan, who has just been up. Duncan, if you can come back, if I say your name, come back up to the stage, please. Duncan, I know you just sat down. It's very tiring, but if you can make your way back. And also on 33. Also on 33 is Michael Fleming. Michael? And 32 is Rosie Cullen. Yeah. Right, where are the others? Okay. So what we're going to do is ask you to stand there and feel mildly uncomfortable whilst I waft around with the money, which, ooh, the money. I get my money after. Come this way. Now, come, there's a whole stage. You're standing on the edge. They're here to see you. So if you just step up to the microphone in any order, and you've got your stories with you, haven't you? No. You haven't? Remember. But you can remember? Well, I'm remembering a couple of lines still, so if we can just... Do you want to go and get your story? Yeah? Yeah, and just read a line from your story. And what's going to happen is people are going to applaud and cheer, and we will choose the person who wins based on who has the loudest applause or the largest family. We have had quite a few Mormon winners in the past, by pure coincidence, and that's how it's going to work. It's reasonably democratic. So do you want to go for it? Do you want to go for it? Well, should we wait until we've all got our stories? Yeah. We'll do it on order. Very tense at this point. And it can be any line. It's just so that we just remember a bit of the flavour. Do you want to go first? Ladies first, or no? No. Okay.
But over his delicatessen, Mr. Pinelli had opened the awning, and it was into that cradle that I fell, the chamois leather flying from my hand and landing with a splat at the feet of the screaming woman.
Yeah.
I'm so completely unprepared, I've forgotten my glasses.
Don't worry. I was going to say, yeah, between us there might be a prescription. Do you want to try mine?
Probably do these, yeah. So sorry.
No?
Okay, then.
Do they work?
Yeah, they do. Thank you very much. Malcolm, happy, jiggling the baby. Oh, well, what are bumpers for, Dad? You'll like this, Mal. In the paper, another ridiculous diktat from those bureaucrats in Brussels. Mum? Malcolm peering in the passenger window. Mum, you all right? Coffee grains. Can you believe it? Dad, I think crime, apparently. Malcolm frozen. The baby crying. Ludicrous. Bloody ludicrous.
It wasn't pleasant. Put it this way, she was a stranger to Brazil, and it was like licking a shag-pile carpet. I thought I'd need a lint roller for my tongue afterwards.
just to be a child? Do you think she's just ahead? Right. The beer is for them, by the way. I'm strictly on a wine diet. Thank you all, and thank you to our 3 finalists. Another round of applause for them. Thank you very much. And to our winner, Rosie. And to our runner-up, to Michael. And to Duncan. Well done, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I'll see you next year. Oh, and of course, to the judges. Yes, thank you to the judges.
And I'd just like to say a huge thank you, first of all, to Meg, who, without whose mathematical ability, we wouldn't have had a final.
Thank you, Meg.
Thank you very much, Meg. And just to thank Damian for yet again producing a wonderful event, a wonderful slam, and making everyone feel supported and encouraged, all of that throughout, and for sinking the best part of a bottle of white wine. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming, and particularly all of those who wrote stories and read those stories, because it takes a lot of courage to do that. We hope that you've enjoyed it, and we hope that you'll come back next year or come back over the weekend for other events in Small Wonder. But thank you very much. Good night.